Millionaire CEO divorced his black wife a day after she saved his life. Months later, she found out the shocking reason. Before we start today's story, comment below where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you haven't already. You won't want to miss what's next. It was 11:47 at night when Alara finally found Caius. She had been waiting all day to come home and see him after finishing an 18-hour surgery at the hospital. She was tired but happy to be home. When she walked into his office, she noticed it was empty. His laptop was still open and glowing, showing work about a new project in Singapore. Alara followed the sound of running water and found him in the guest bathroom. Her heart stopped for a moment. Caius was slumped against the shiny marble counter. His face was pale and gray and his skin was wet with sweat. He was gasping for air. "Can't breathe," he whispered. Alara was a trauma doctor and she instantly switched into action. She checked his pulse. It was weak and racing. His lips were turning blue. "Classic cardiac arrest," she said quickly, grabbing her phone. "This is Dr. Alara Vesper. I need an ambulance at 432 Fifth Avenue, penthouse level. 34-year-old male, possible heart attack with severe irregular heartbeat." She found aspirin in the medicine cabinet and placed it in his hand. "Caius, chew this. Stay with me, baby." But then his pulse stopped completely. "No, no, no, no," she cried. She gently laid him on the bathroom floor, placed her hands on his chest, and began pushing hard and fast. 1, 2, 3. "Come on, Caius. Don't you dare leave me." She had done CPR hundreds of times at work, but never on the man she loved. Every push felt like it was breaking her heart, and if she failed, she wouldn't just lose her husband, she'd lose the father of the baby he didn't even know about yet. Minutes felt like hours, but finally, after 4 long minutes, she felt his pulse again, weak, but there. By the time the paramedics rushed in, Caius was awake, whispering, "Alara, love you." Tears filled her eyes. "I love you too. I'll meet you at the hospital." Hours later, Dr. Silas Croft, a cardiologist Alara had known from her hospital training years ago, walked into the waiting area. Silas had always been serious but kind. He looked tired now, his scrubs wrinkled from a long night, but he gave her a small smile. "He's stable," Silas said. "His heart stopped because of extreme stress and dehydration, but he responded well to treatment. We ran every test, heart scans, blood work, everything. His heart muscle looks fine, no permanent damage." Alara let out a huge sigh of relief. "So it wasn't a heart attack?" "No," Silas said gently. "It's called stress-induced cardiomyopathy. His heart literally stopped working because of too much stress and exhaustion. It's more common than people think, especially for overworked professionals." "But he's okay now?" "Yes," Silas said with a warm smile. "We'll keep him overnight just to watch him, but I expect a full recovery." He rested a hand on her shoulder. "Alara, you saved his life. If you hadn't done CPR when you did..." He didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need him to. "Can I see him?" "He's sleeping, but yes, room 314. When Alara entered the room, Caius looked peaceful. He was resting in the hospital bed, his dark hair messy, his face calm for the first time in weeks. The steady beep, beep, beep of the heart monitor was the sweetest sound she'd ever heard. She sat in the chair next to him and held his warm hand. She remembered the first time she noticed those hands at a charity party 3 years ago. Strong hands that had built a successful company, gentle hands that always touched her with love. She placed her free hand on her stomach. "Tomorrow," she thought. "Tomorrow I'll tell him about the baby. Tomorrow we'll start planning our future. He'll slow down. This will be a wake-up call." She stayed awake most of the night, watching him breathe, terrified that something might go wrong if she left. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and she fell asleep, with her head resting on his bed, their fingers still locked together. When Alara woke up, Caius was stroking her hair softly, just like he used to on lazy Sunday mornings. "Hey, beautiful," he whispered, his voice tired but stronger. "Hey, yourself," she smiled, sitting up even though her neck hurt from sleeping awkwardly. "How are you feeling?" "Much better." Doctor, Doc Croft says I can go home today. His warm smile made her heart flutter. Thank you for saving my life. She squeezed his hand, tears filling her eyes. Thank you for not dying on me, but we need to talk about your stress levels. This can't happen again. I agree, he said. Maybe it's time I finally hired that COO you keep suggesting. Alara's heart lifted. Maybe it is. They spent the rest of the morning together, and for the first time he looked relaxed. The nightmare of last night felt far away. Before they left, a nurse appeared. Dr. Croft wants to see you for some final checks. Caius kissed Alara's hand. Why don't you go home and rest? I'll take a cab when I'm done. Are you sure? Positive. You've been here all night. Go get some real rest. I'll be home before dinner. She kissed his forehead and whispered, We'll talk tonight. Alara left the hospital feeling light and happy. The city was bright and busy, and her husband was alive. Tonight, she would finally tell him about the baby. She spent the day dreaming about their future. Caius would step back from his company, and they'd hire a full management team. They'd move to a house with a big yard, take real vacations, and raise their baby together. That night, Caius came home just like he promised. They ordered Thai food and cuddled on the couch. He was more present than he'd been in months. I love you, he said suddenly. I love you too, she replied, surprised by the deep emotion in his voice. I realized something last night, Caius said softly. None of this matters. The company, the deals, the money. None of it means anything without you. Tears filled her eyes. I'm so glad you're here. She fell asleep in his arms, dreaming of the moment she'd share her big news. The next morning she woke up alone. She heard him downstairs moving papers around, making coffee. She smiled. Perfect timing. Today's the day. She looked in the mirror, noticing small changes in her body. She touched her stomach lovingly and grabbed the positive pregnancy test she'd kept hidden. She couldn't wait to see his reaction. But when she came downstairs, her excitement faded. Caius was standing in the kitchen in his navy suit, holding a manila envelope. His face was calm, too calm, like he was preparing for something serious. You're up early, she said, slipping the test into her pocket. He looked at her, his voice flat. We need to talk. Her heart sank. This wasn't how she imagined this morning. He slid the envelope across the counter toward her. The morning was very quiet, but the sound of his voice felt scary. I want a divorce. The words hit Alara like a heavy stone. She couldn't breathe. She grabbed the counter to hold herself up. This had to be a mistake, a bad joke, something she didn't understand. I'm sorry. Divorce papers. I already signed them. Her hands moved on their own. She opened the envelope with shaking fingers. The words on the paper blurred as she tried to read. Irreconcilable differences. Division of assets. Dissolution of marriage. Big, complicated words. But one thing was clear. Caius's signature was real. She knew his handwriting. She had seen him write that way on business papers, birthday cards, and even their marriage certificate 3 years ago. The pregnancy test in her pocket felt as heavy as a rock. How could this be happening? How could the man who whispered, I love you, last night hand her divorce papers this morning? How could the man whose life she had saved 2 days ago throw their marriage away? I don't understand, she whispered. Her voice sounded like it came from someone else. 2 days ago, you were talking about hiring a COO for your company. Yesterday, you almost died, and I saved your life. Last night, you said nothing else mattered but us. What's changed? Nothing's changed. That's the problem. Caius fixed his tie, calm and cold, like he was going to a business meeting instead of breaking his wife's heart. I've been thinking about this for months, Alara. We're not right for each other. We want different things. What different things? We've never talked about wanting different things, she cried, her voice rising. Her heart was beating so fast she felt dizzy. Caius, what is this? What's really happening? I want to build my company without being distracted by a marriage that isn't working. You want a husband who comes home at 5 p.m. and asks about your day. We're incompatible. The word incompatible felt like she stared at him, tears filling her eyes. This was the man who built her a cozy reading nook in their bedroom because he knew she loved books. The man who brought her coffee every single morning before she went to work. The man who cried with her when she lost her first patient as a doctor. Caius, I love your passion. I love your passion for your work. I've never asked you to change. Haven't you? You worry about my health all the time. You tell me to get help and work less. You want me to be someone I'm not. I want you to be alive. Alara finally screamed. I want you to be healthy enough to enjoy the success you worked so hard for. I want us to have a future together. Her hand tightened around the pregnancy test in her pocket. Should she tell him? Would it change anything? Or would he see it as her trying to control him, to trap him? And I want to be free to build something important without feeling guilty when I work late, Caius said, walking toward the door. My lawyer will handle everything. The prenup already covers most of it, but I'll be generous with the settlement. Alara followed him, her legs heavy, her robe trailing on the cold marble floor. She was still holding the envelope, divorce papers inside. Caius, please, she begged. We can talk about this. We can try counseling. We can fix this. Please. He paused at the elevator. For just a second, his face softened and she saw pain in his eyes. It made her want to hold him, even though he was breaking her heart. I'm sorry, Alara. This seems sudden, but I've made up my mind. Is there someone else? She whispered. Maybe if he was having an affair, at least there would be a reason, something to understand. No, there's no one else. The elevator doors opened. He stepped inside. His hands were shaking as he pressed the button. Take care of yourself. Then the doors closed, and he was gone. Alara stood in the empty hallway, papers falling to the floor. She touched the test in her pocket. The man she saved, the man she loved with all her heart, just left her. He gave her no reason, no warning, no chance to fight. She had never felt so alone. The test in her pocket no longer felt like a happy secret. It felt like a heavy burden. How could she tell him now? Would she really want to fight for a man who left her so easily? She sank onto the cold floor and cried. Big, heavy sobs shook her whole body. She cried for the future they had dreamed of, for the family they would never have, for the man she thought she knew who turned out to be a stranger. Hours later, she picked up the papers with trembling hands. She read every word carefully, her doctor's mind taking over. The settlement was more than generous. Caius was giving her the penthouse, money to last her whole life, even health insurance through his company. He was trying to make himself feel better by giving her everything, but that didn't ease her pain. 3 days later, she sat in her doctor's office, staring at the ultrasound screen. 8 weeks pregnant, due in late June, Dr. Anya said softly. Alara's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the tiny dot on the screen. This little baby had no idea her parents' marriage was over. Everything looks healthy, Anya said kindly. She had been Alara's doctor for 5 years. She had done Alara's premarital blood work. She had been planning to guide her through pregnancy when the time came. Have you told the father yet? Anya asked gently. Alara let out a broken laugh. He gave me divorce papers 3 days ago. He doesn't know, and I don't think he'd care. Anya's face softened with sympathy. She had seen Alara and Caius at parties and hospital events. They had looked like the perfect couple, successful, in love, happy. I'm so sorry, Anya said softly. Do you have support? Family? Friends? I'll figure it out, Alara said, taking the ultrasound photo with shaking hands. She stared at the tiny dot. I'm a surgeon. I handle emergencies. But this didn't feel like an emergency she could fix. Alara sat in her car, staring at the photo. She thought about calling Caius. His number was still in her phone under husband. She hadn't changed it yet. She could tell him about the baby. She could make him face what he was leaving behind. But deep down, she knew that wouldn't be right. She wouldn't trap him. She wouldn't use their baby as a reason to keep him. Their child deserved to be wanted, not used as a weapon. The divorce was finalized quickly. Lawyers handled everything. She didn't have to see Caius again. He kept his promise. The settlement was more than generous. She could live anywhere in the world. She chose Montreal. The winter there was cold, matching the emptiness in her heart. She wanted distance from New York, from all the memories of Caius. She couldn't risk seeing him again at a conference or party. Montreal was far enough. She bought a beautiful townhouse in Westmount. It had 3 floors, shiny wood floors, and huge windows. It was the kind of home they had dreamed of buying when they wanted to start a family. Now she walked through it alone, imagining a nursery and a baby laughing in empty rooms. She kept herself busy transferring her medical license. It took mountains of paperwork, hard exams, and endless interviews. People guessed she left New York because of a messy divorce or drama. She didn't correct them. The truth was too painful. Montreal General Hospital became her escape. The trauma center was busy and loud, full of emergencies that needed her skills. She threw herself into work, taking extra shifts, helping the hardest cases, doing anything to keep her mind too tired to cry. The doctors there were kind. The head of emergency, Dr. Lucien Faure, never asked too many questions, but his kind eyes told her he understood she was running from something. "This work is hard," he told her in his gentle French accent, "but it is also healing. Sometimes we save others to save ourselves." Alara nodded, her heart aching. She started learning French quickly so she could speak to her patients. Alara was starting to think in French more and more. It felt like her mind was rebuilding itself in a language that didn't carry the pain of her old memories. Her pregnancy was going well, which felt like a miracle because she was so stressed. She had regular checkups with Dr. Colette Bessette-Boucard, a kind obstetrician who spoke perfect English and never made Alara feel like a foreigner. Dr. Boucard always said the baby was growing strong, even with everything Alara was going through. "Babies are strong," Dr. Boucard told her during an appointment when Alara felt emotional. "Your little one knows she is loved, even if life feels hard right now." At the 20-week ultrasound, Alara learned what she already felt deep inside. She was having a baby girl. She named her Serafina after her grandmother. The baby's middle name would be Wren, because Caius, the baby's father, had always loved wrens. Even though Caius would never meet their daughter, Alara wanted their love to be part of Serafina's life. At Montreal General Hospital, Alara found a new family among the doctors and nurses. Dr. Elodie Gagnon, a young emergency doctor, reminded Alara of herself when she was younger. Smart, brave, and sometimes too busy to take care of herself. Bastien Leroux, a friendly paramedic, became her friend after bringing in some complicated cases Alara had handled. They invited her out for drinks after hard shifts, included her in weekend plans, and made sure she wasn't lonely in her beautiful but empty house. No one asked too many questions about her past. Canadians were polite that way. They didn't push her for details she wasn't ready to share. Their quiet kindness was exactly what Alara needed. "You're glowing," Elodie told her one evening in the hospital cafeteria when Alara was 6 months pregnant. "Thank you," Alara said softly, smoothing her scrubs over her round belly. She had started showing early, probably because she was thin, and it was hard to hide the baby bump. "Will the father be coming here to Montreal?" Elodie asked carefully. She was curious but tried to be gentle. Alara took a sip of her decaf coffee, one of the many changes she'd made for pregnancy. "No," she said quietly. "He's not in the picture." Elodie nodded and didn't ask more questions. In the medical field, people understood that families could be complicated. Winter in Montreal was very cold, but somehow it matched Alara's feelings inside. The icy wind felt sharp and clean, like it left no room to cry or dwell on sadness. She learned how to walk through the underground tunnels during storms and discovered how nice it felt to step into a warm, bright place after being out in freezing air. Her landlady, Madame Rousseau, was a kind widow in her 70s. She lived on the ground floor of the townhouse. Madame Rousseau often brought Alara home-cooked meals, especially when she looked tired. She never asked questions about why an American doctor was living alone in Montreal with a baby on the way. "Little babies bring joy, even when life is hard," Madame Rousseau said one evening as she handed Alara a pot of soup. She stayed to chat in her mix of French and accented English. "When your baby comes, everything else will feel less important." As the due date got closer, Alara tried not to think about Caius. She tried not to picture him feeling their baby kick or building a crib. She tried not to wonder if he thought about the life they had dreamed of or if he had moved on. But at night, when Serafina kicked hard, Alara found herself whispering to her belly about the father her daughter would never meet. "Your daddy is amazing," she whispered in the dark. "He's changing the world with clean energy. He's stubborn, passionate, and he works too much. But he has the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known." She never talked about why Caius wasn't there. She didn't try to explain the hard story behind Serafina's birth. She knew there would be time for that when Serafina was older. For now, Alara just wanted her daughter to know she was loved and created out of love, even if that love didn't last. By her third trimester, Alara almost convinced herself she was better without him. Almost. She had a full life now in Montreal, a respected job, caring friends, and a warm home for her baby. But late at night, she would scroll through old photos of her and Caius. She never called or texted him. She didn't want to disturb the new life she imagined he was living without her. But she kept the photos. She couldn't close her heart completely. Liana was Ilara's closest friend. They had been roommates in medical school, and Liana was her maid of honor at her wedding. Liana understood Ilara's fierce love and intelligence better than anyone. Even though their careers had gone in different directions, Alara as a trauma surgeon, Liana as a medical consultant, they stayed close. One snowy February evening, Liana arrived at Alara's door. She was 8 months pregnant too and looked exhausted. Alara's first thought was that something terrible had happened. Liana's perfect hair was messy, her expensive coat wrinkled. "Liana, what are you doing here? Is everything okay?" Alara asked in shock. "Can I come in?" "It's about Caius," Liana said. The name hit Alara like a stone in a calm lake, sending ripples through the peace she had carefully built over the last 8 months. She had been so careful not to think about him, not to hope. She wasn't ready to hear his name. "I don't want to hear about him," Alara said sharply, her voice shaking. "Alara, please. I flew here from New York because there are things you need to know, things that change everything." Against her better judgment, Alara let her in. She helped Liana out of her snowy coat and led her to the living room. A fire was crackling in the fireplace. The warm, cozy room was filled with soft furniture, something Alara hadn't cared for in New York, but now it was her safe space. Alara made tea with hands that trembled. She still remembered Liana's favorite, Earl Grey with honey, from their late-night study sessions in medical school. Liana sat heavily on the couch, her pregnancy making everything harder while Alara paced nervously. "You look amazing," Liana said finally, her eyes softening as she took in Alara's round belly. "Pregnancy suits you. You're glowing. Thank you. Now tell me why you're here, because if this is about forgiving him—" "He didn't send me," Liana interrupted quickly. "He doesn't even know I'm here." Liana sat on the edge of the armchair like she might run away. "Alara, he's sick. Really sick. I found out by accident. Some insurance papers got mixed up with work I was doing for his company. I saw medical reports that weren't meant for me." Alara froze, her hands tightening around her teacup. "Leukemia," Liana said softly. "Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. He was diagnosed the day after he collapsed, the day you saved him." Alara's brain struggled to understand. Leukemia was a serious cancer. Survival rates could be good if caught early, but the treatment was hard. That's impossible. He would have told me, Alara whispered. He wouldn't have, Liana said gently. Think about it, Alara. He's been going through chemo alone. Completely alone. Chemotherapy, Alara repeated like she didn't recognize the word. He's been in treatment for 8 months, Liana said softly. A week after your divorce was finalized. 8 months. The same 8 months Alara had been carrying their child in another country, hating him for leaving her. While she learned French and built a new life, he had been fighting for his life. I don't understand. Why wouldn't he tell me? Why would he leave me when he needed me most? Wait a second. If you're enjoying this story, make sure to subscribe and share your favorite part in the comments below. And don't forget to drop a heart to show your support. Alara's voice broke. Because he's an idiot, Liana said fiercely. Because he thought leaving you was noble. He didn't want you to watch him die. The truth hit Alara like a storm. The timing of everything now made sense. His heart episode, their sudden divorce, his cold behavior. He hadn't stopped loving her. He had been dying and trying to protect her. How is he now? She whispered. He's in remission. He has been for 3 months. The doctors say his future looks good, Liana said, gripping her hands. But Alara, it was horrible. He lost 40 pounds. His hair fell out. Some days he couldn't stand, but he kept working like nothing was wrong. Tears ran down Alara's face. For months, she had believed he didn't love her. She had spent nights replaying their last conversation, wondering what she had done wrong. Alara, Liana said quietly, there's something else. He doesn't know about the baby. Alara gasped. All this time, she had been angry at him for abandoning their child, but he didn't even know he had one. I know you had your reasons for not telling him, Liana said gently, but he thinks you moved on. He thinks you're happy without him. He thinks you found someone else. How could I tell him? Alara cried. He gave me divorce papers. He looked me in the eye and said I was a distraction. How could I use a pregnancy to get him back? You weren't supposed to use it, Liana said softly. You were supposed to tell him because he's the father. Alara looked down at her belly. Serafina was kicking hard, as if she knew something important was happening. 8 months of anger melted into something else. Grief for his pain, guilt for not knowing, and love that had never gone away. What am I supposed to do now? She whispered. Show up 8 months pregnant and say, surprise, you're going to be a dad. Sorry you had to fight cancer alone. I don't know, Liana admitted, but I had to tell you. He loves you, Alara. He made mistakes, but he did it because he thought it was the only way to protect you. He signed those divorce papers with tears in his eyes. He went through chemo alone, without the person he needed most. Alara's heart felt heavy. There was only one thing to do. I have to go back, she said quietly. The words came out of Alara's mouth before she could stop herself, before she could think about anything, like how she was 8 months pregnant. Alara, you're 8 months pregnant? You shouldn't be flying, especially when you're so upset, her friend said. I don't care, Alara said as she struggled to stand up. Her mind was already racing, thinking about booking a flight, figuring out what to say to him when she saw him. I have to see him. I have to tell him about Serafina. Her friend looked worried. What if he doesn't want to see you? What if he still thinks leaving you was the right thing? What if he's moved on? Alara put her hands on her big belly where Caius's baby girl was growing strong. For 8 months, she had tried to build a life without him, telling herself she was better off alone. But deep down, she had never stopped loving him. She had never stopped missing him. She had never stopped hoping that someday, somehow, they would find their way back to each other. Then I'll convince him otherwise, she whispered. She placed both hands on her belly and felt Serafina kick hard, as if cheering her on. We'll convince him otherwise. The flight from Montreal to New York felt like it would never end. Alara shifted in her first-class seat, one of the few things she could still use from Caius's generous divorce settlement. Her baby girl seemed to think her bladder was a trampoline, making her even more uncomfortable. Every few minutes, Alara wanted to grab her phone and call him, to warn him that his life was about to change forever. But she stopped herself. This talk had to happen face to face. After 8 months of silence, after everything they had both been through, she owed him that much. The business class section of the plane was almost empty for the late afternoon flight. The kind flight attendant gave her extra pillows and blankets without her even asking. Alara tried to sleep, but her mind wouldn't stop thinking about everything Liana had told her. She now knew Caius had been fighting for his life while she had been building a new one. He had been going through chemotherapy while she had been learning French. He had been losing weight, hair, and strength while she had been getting rounder and rounder with his baby. It felt like some kind of cruel joke from the universe. She thought about the day he found out he had cancer. The day after he collapsed, while she had been planning to tell him about her pregnancy, Dr. Croft had been giving him news that would change everything. No wonder he had seemed so cold and distant that morning in their kitchen. No wonder he had been so quiet. He had been preparing for the hardest talk of his life. The plane shook from turbulence somewhere over upstate New York, and Serafina kicked again. "Easy, sweetheart," Alara whispered, rubbing her belly. "We're going to see your daddy. We're finally going to meet him, the man I've been telling you about all these months. But what would she say to him? How do you start a conversation with someone who has been through so much pain while you've been living a completely different life? How do you explain 8 months of silence, 8 months of carrying his child while he faced cancer alone? She had practiced her words on the plane, but none of them felt right. "I'm pregnant with your daughter," sounded too sudden. "We need to talk," sounded too plain. "I never stopped loving you," sounded too desperate, even if it was true. She had no idea how he would react to seeing her. For all she knew, maybe he had moved on. Maybe being sick had made him see things clearly and made him feel that leaving her had been the right thing. Maybe he was happy to be free of their marriage, free to focus only on his health and work. But she had to try. Serafina deserved a father, and Caius deserved to know he was going to be one. Whatever pain and misunderstandings had come between them, they had to at least try to find a way forward. The Thorn building on Madison Avenue looked smaller than she remembered. Its glass front reflected the late February sky like a giant mirror. She'd only been there a few times during their marriage because Caius had always wanted to keep work and home separate. But the old security guard, Eris, recognized her right away. "Mrs. Thorn? I mean, Dr. Vesper," he said, blushing at his mistake. His eyes widened when he saw her large belly. "I didn't know you were... I mean..." "It's okay, Eris," she said kindly. "Is he in?" "Yes, ma'am. Top floor as always. Should I call him and let him know you're here?" "No, I'd like to surprise him." Eris looked unsure. Divorced couples didn't usually visit each other's offices, especially when one was pregnant. But Eris liked Alara. She always asked about his wife and grandchildren. "Of course, ma'am. You know the way," he said. The elevator ride to the 40th floor felt like going to Judgment Day. She caught her reflection in the shiny doors. 8 months pregnant, her wool coat barely closing around her, her face pale but full of determination. She looked exactly like what she was, a woman traveling across borders to fight for her family. Her hands shook as the elevator numbers climbed. 25, 30, 35, 40. Each number brought her closer to a conversation that would change everything forever. The executive floor looked the same as she remembered. Clean and simple, with huge windows showing the Manhattan skyline, quiet hallways, fresh flowers, and expensive artwork. Caius's assistant, Genevieve, looked up and froze. "Dr. Vesper, we weren't expecting, Genevieve's eyes flicked between Alara's face and her belly, her mouth opening and closing like she didn't know what to say. "Is he in his office?" Alara asked. "Yes, but he's on a video call with Singapore. I should probably." Genevieve reached for the phone to warn Caius, but Alara was already walking past her. Her heels clicked against the marble floor, her heart pounding so loudly she thought everyone could hear it. "Dr. Vesper, please, if you could just wait," Genevieve called after her, but Alara was already at his door. She stopped for a moment, gathering courage, listening to his voice through the heavy wooden door. He sounded confident and strong, talking passionately about his work. That same energy had first attracted her to him years ago at a charity event. She opened the door without knocking. Caius stood near the windows, his back to her, talking to someone on his laptop. He looked thinner than she remembered, his shoulders sharper under his suit, but he was alive. He was standing and talking and alive. That was all that mattered. "I'm sorry, gentlemen," he said to the screen, "but something's come up. Genevieve, can you reschedule this for—" He turned around and froze. They stared at each other for what felt like forever. His eyes went from her face to her belly, his expression changing from shock to confusion, disbelief, and maybe even wonder. He looked different. He was thinner, and there were new lines on his face. His hair, once thick and dark, was shorter now, clearly growing back after falling out. But his eyes were the same, deep brown, full of intelligence and warmth, and right now those eyes looked full of hope. "I'll call you back," he said into the laptop, closing it with a sharp click. Silence filled the room. Alara had practiced what to say, but now all her words were gone. "You look," he started, his voice breaking. "Pregnant," she said, her voice steady. 8 months pregnant, to be exact. His face turned pale. He grabbed his desk for support. Is she mine?" he whispered. "Yes," Alara said firmly. Caius sank into his chair as if his legs couldn't hold him anymore. He stared at her belly, trying to piece everything together. "But you never said anything when we were married." "Because I didn't get the chance," she said, her voice strong now. "I found out 3 days after you gave me the divorce papers. 3 days after you left me without a word." "Oh God," he whispered. "Alara, I'm so sorry. If I had known—" "You would have what?" "Stayed out of pity?" she asked sharply. She needed to know. "No," he said quickly, his voice strong. "I would have stayed because I love you. I've loved you every day since I left. Leaving you was the hardest thing I've ever done." The words filled the space between them, heavy and real. 8 months of silence, of pain, and he still loved her. "Then why?" she cried, all the pain pouring out of her. "Why did you throw away our marriage? Why did you make me believe you didn't want me anymore?" He stayed quiet for a long time, his hands clasped together, his eyes staring past her. When he finally spoke, his voice was tired and full of pain. "Because I thought I was dying," he said. "The day after you saved my life, Dr. Croft told me I had leukemia. Even with treatment, there were no promises. I couldn't let you watch me waste away." For a moment, Alara's heart filled with pure joy. She was finally sharing the secret she had carried alone for so long. She could see in his eyes that he was imagining their future, teaching their daughter to ride a bike, reading bedtime stories, one day walking her down the aisle. But then guilt filled his face. "Caius," she said softly, moving closer. She saw his hands trembling, tears filling his eyes. "I made a vow to you 3 years ago, for better or worse, in sickness and in health. Did you think they were just pretty words?" "I thought I was protecting you," he whispered. "Protecting me from what? From loving you, from fighting with you, from being there when you needed me the most?" Alara's voice shook with emotion. She had been holding in her pain for 8 long months, but now it all came out. "You took that choice away from me," she said, tears in her eyes. "You took away my right to be your wife when you needed me the most." "I know," Caius said softly. "I know, and I'm sorry. But Alara, you don't understand what the treatment was like. The chemo, the hospitals, the fear." She froze at one word, "was." The past tense, her heart raced. She looked up at him quickly. He finally met her eyes for the first time since she had walked into the room. "I've been in remission for 3 months," he said gently. "Full remission. The doctors say my chances are excellent." Alara gasped. Relief crashed over her so strongly that she had to grab the edge of his desk to keep from falling. Her knees felt weak, and she couldn't breathe for a moment. He was okay. Caius was okay. The man she loved, the father of her baby, was going to live. "You're okay," she whispered. "You're really okay." "I'm okay," he said softly. "But Alara..." He stood up slowly and walked around his desk, but stopped just out of reach, like he was afraid to touch her. "Even if I told you the truth from the beginning, even if we had faced it together, I destroyed us. I destroyed everything we had." Alara looked at him carefully. She really saw him now. The dark circles under his eyes, his clothes hanging loosely on his body, the way he kept a careful distance like he didn't believe he deserved her. She could see that the months of treatment had been brutal. His face had new lines, and he moved carefully like he was still in pain. But beneath all that, he was still Caius. Still the man who fell in love with her passion for saving lives. Still the man who dreamed of changing the world with clean energy. "Do you love me?" she asked softly. "More than my own life," he answered without hesitation. "Do you want this baby, our daughter?" "With everything I am," he said. She closed the distance between them and took his hands in hers. His hands were warm and steady, but thinner than she remembered. They had small scars, probably from IVs and medical treatments. But they were his hands. The hands that had held her, loved her, and built a company to make the world better. "Then nothing's destroyed," Alara whispered. "Nothing that we can't rebuild." She squeezed his fingers, feeling the rough spot on his ring finger where his wedding band used to be. "We said, for better or worse, remember? This was our worse. But if you want it, if you really want it, we can find our way to better." Caius stared down at their joined hands, his eyes full of a battle between hope and fear, love and guilt, the future and the painful past. He had spent 8 months believing he made the right choice. 8 months convincing himself she was better off without him. 8 months fighting cancer alone because he thought it was noble. "I don't deserve another chance," he whispered. "That's not your choice to make. It's mine," she said gently. Alara lifted one of his hands and placed it gently on her belly. Their daughter kicked strongly under his palm. "And I choose you, Caius," Alara said. "I choose us. I choose our family." Caius froze, his eyes wide as he felt his daughter move for the first time. His face softened and tears filled his eyes. All the walls he had built around himself crumbled. "She's real," he whispered in awe. "She's really real." "She's been real this whole time," Alara said softly. "She's been growing, kicking, hiccuping, and making me crave the strangest foods. She gets active every night around 10, right when you used to come to bed. I think she already has your schedule." He laughed through his tears, and the sound filled Alara's heart. She hadn't heard that laugh in so long that it made her cry too. "What have you been calling her?" he asked. Serafina Wren," Alara said carefully, watching his face. "Serafina after my grandmother. Wren because..." She hesitated. "Because wrens are your favorite flower," Caius finished, his voice thick with emotion. "You remembered." "I remember everything about you, Caius," she said softly. "I remember how you take your coffee, how you hum when you're concentrating, how you always check your phone 3 times before bed. I remember how you cry at dog movies and that you can't sleep without the window open. I remember all of it because I never stopped loving you." Caius looked at her with wonder and gratitude, finally forgiving her, forgiving himself, and maybe even forgiving the cruel timing that almost ruined them. "I missed so much," he whispered, his voice breaking. I missed your entire pregnancy. I missed watching her grow. I missed being there when you needed me." "Then don't miss anymore," Alara said softly. She covered his hand with both of hers, holding it over their baby's kicking. "Be here now. Be here for the rest of it." He kissed her, soft and desperate, pouring 8 months of longing into that kiss. Their tears mixed together, and something that felt like forgiveness bloomed between them. When they pulled away, she could see the man she married in his eyes again. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you both so much." "Then come home," Alara said. "Come home and help me get ready for our daughter." That day, they didn't go back to the penthouse. Instead, Caius took her to a small cafe near the hospital where he had his treatments. It had been his safe place during the hardest months of his life. "I used to sit in that corner booth," he told her, pointing to a table by the window. The cafe was warm and cozy, filled with the smell of fresh coffee and pastries. It felt like a peaceful escape from the noisy city. "I'd watch families walk by with their children," Caius said softly. "And I'd imagine our daughter. I'd imagine if she'd have your stubborn streak or your brilliant mind." "Definitely the stubborn streak," Alara said with a smile, rubbing her belly as their daughter moved again. "She's been keeping me up at night for weeks, and she's very picky about what I eat." The kind waitress, a woman in her 50s, brought them tea without even asking. "The usual spot, Dr. Thorne?" she asked kindly. Alara realized this cafe had been Caius's lifeline. They talked for hours, carefully peeling back the pain and silence of 8 months. Caius told her about the day he was diagnosed, about sitting in Dr. Croft's office hearing terrifying numbers and treatment plans, about how he decided to protect her by disappearing. "The first thing I thought was, I can't let Alara go through this," Caius said, his hands wrapped tightly around his cup. "The second thing I thought was, she'll want to fight with me, and I can't ask her to." "You should have asked me," Alara said softly. "I know that now," Caius admitted. "But all I could picture was you watching me die. I couldn't do that to you. I didn't want your whole life to become about taking care of me." He told her about sitting through chemo alone, about the nausea, the exhaustion, the fear that it wouldn't work, about the nights he almost called her but convinced himself it was selfish. "I followed your career," he admitted. "I read every paper you published. I watched the news when you moved to Montreal. I was so proud of you." Alara told him about Montreal, about building a new life while carrying his child. She told him about her colleagues who became her family and the nights she cried, wishing he was there to feel Serafina's kicks. "I kept our wedding ring," she said, showing him the simple band on her right hand. "I kept mine too," he said softly. He pulled a chain from under his shirt, showing his ring that he wore close to his heart. Seeing their rings made them realize they had both been holding on to hope all along. That evening, they made plans. Not big, dramatic ones, but small, practical steps to rebuild their family. Doctor's visits so Caius could be part of the pregnancy, couples counseling to heal their pain, and a nursery for Serafina. "I want to be there," Caius said as they walked toward his building. "For the birth, the late-night feedings, for everything, if you'll let me." "Try and stop me," Alara teased, squeezing his hand. "But Caius, no more noble sacrifices, no more deciding for both of us. We're in this together." "Together." He agreed and sealed it with a kiss. The next few weeks were busy but full of hope. Caius went to Montreal to help Alara pack up her life. He met her friends and coworkers and thanked them for caring for her. "Thank you for taking care of her when I couldn't," he said to Dr. Debauche. "She took care of herself," the doctor said kindly. "But you're a lucky man." "I know," Caius said, his arm around Alara. "I'm very lucky." They decided to start fresh in a new home, not in Montreal or Manhattan, but in a peaceful house in West Chester. It was close to the city but quiet, with a garden for children to play in and space for their future. Their first project together was the nursery. They painted the walls soft yellow because it reminded them of sunshine. They added a rocking chair by the window and shelves waiting for books. "She's going to be so loved," Alara said one night, standing in the doorway. "She already is," Caius said, resting his hands on her belly. Serafina Renthorn arrived 6 weeks later on a beautiful April morning, screaming loudly as if to announce her arrival. The labor was long and hard, 18 hours, but Caius stayed by Alara's side the whole time, holding her hand, whispering encouragement, even when she threatened to murder him if he told her to breathe again. "She's perfect," he whispered with tears in his eyes as the doctor placed Serafina on Alara's chest. Serafina had Caius's dark hair and Alara's determined chin. The moment Caius held her, he cried harder than he ever had before. "She's just like her daddy," Alara whispered, watching her husband cradle their daughter. "She's strong," Caius said proudly as Serafina gripped his finger tightly. "She's going to be a fighter like her mother," Alara added with a tired smile, "and stubborn like her father." They were exhausted, but their hearts were full. Their family was complete. After everything they had been through, their time apart, their secrets, and the months of living separate lives, Alara and Caius were finally together again. Now they were a family. The first few months after their baby, Serafina, was born, were busy and tiring. Alara and Caius had many sleepless nights and so much to learn about being parents. Serafina was strong-willed and always knew what she wanted. She didn't like to sleep, and she wanted to eat as soon as she got hungry. Caius worked very hard to be a good father. He learned to change diapers carefully, like a scientist. He figured out how to feed Serafina at 3 a.m. without waking her up, and he was the best at calming her cries, except for Alara. Watching Caius with Serafina felt like watching him discover a new part of himself. "I never knew," he whispered one night as he walked around the nursery, rocking Serafina to help her sleep. "I never knew I could love someone this much." "Now you know why I was so angry," Alara said gently. She switched Serafina to her other shoulder. "This is what you almost missed. This is what you almost threw away." Life wasn't perfect after that. No real love story is perfect. Alara and Caius had to work hard to rebuild trust. They learned to talk about their fears instead of making guesses about what the other person wanted. Caius had to face the guilt of his mistakes. He had to learn how to let people help him instead of trying to protect everyone by himself. Alara had to forgive him and herself for all the time they had lost. Caius's cancer still needed careful watching. He had blood tests every 3 months and scans every year. Even though it was scary waiting for results, every clean test felt like a big celebration. Every milestone, Serafina's first birthday, her first steps, her first word, which was "da," of course, felt like a precious gift they might not have had. They went through everything together. Sleepless nights with the fussy baby, nervous days waiting for Caius's test results, and all the normal challenges of building a happy life. 2 years later, another baby joined their family. Felix Eris Thorn. Felix was a chubby, cheerful baby who loved to giggle. He adored his big sister. Serafina, now a determined little girl, was proud to be a big sister. She helped with feeding Felix and changing his diapers, and she told everyone that Felix was her baby. "2 kids," Caius said one night while giving Felix a bottle. Serafina stood beside him, helping, while Alara slept on the couch. "Think we can handle it?" "I think we can handle anything," Serafina said seriously. She was only 4, but her wisdom made Caius smile. "Mama says we're a team," she added. "That's right, sweetheart," Caius said. "We're a team." Their company was doing well. The management team they had built was strong, and Caius stepped back from running it every day. He focused on big ideas, and Thorn Renewable Energy became a model for other businesses. People admired how Caius had survived cancer while building a successful company. Alara went back to medicine part-time, helping with trauma cases. Being a mother made her a better doctor because she truly understood the pain of families waiting in hospitals. She knew what it was like to love someone so much that their pain felt like your own. They told their children their story, honestly, but in ways they could understand. Serafina and Felix learned that love wasn't always easy. But families stayed strong by working through hard times together. Daddy was sick when I was in Mommy's tummy, Serafina explained to Felix one day. But he got better, and then we all lived happily ever after. It wasn't completely true, but it wasn't wrong either. 5 years after that terrible morning in their kitchen when their family almost broke apart, Alara watched Caius teach Serafina to ride her bike in Central Park. Felix toddled behind them on his wobbly little legs. Alara thought about how close they had come to losing everything. One mistake, one bad choice, had almost taken away their future, their love, and their chance at happiness. "Mama, look!" Serafina shouted as she pedaled fast, her face glowing with excitement. "I'm flying!" "Yes, baby," Alara called back with a smile. "You're absolutely flying." She looked at Caius and saw her own joy reflected in his eyes. They had made this life together. Their beautiful children, their imperfect but strong love, this precious second chance. They knew how easily it could have been lost, which made it all the more special. As Alara watched Serafina ride her bike with fearless joy, she thought about what she had learned. Real love and courage mean holding on even when everything inside you tells you to let go. The park was full of families. Parents pushed strollers, children played on swings, couples walked hand in hand with their dogs running beside them. Years ago, Caius had sat in a cafe window during chemotherapy, watching scenes like this and wondering if he'd ever had to have a family of his own. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't gone to Montreal?" Alara asked him, sitting on a bench while they watched their children. "If Liana hadn't found those medical records?" "Every day," Caius admitted, wrapping his arm around her. "But I try not to think about it too much. We can't change the past, and now we have everything we dreamed of." "Do we?" Alara asked softly. "Is this what you imagined when you watched other families from that cafe?" "This is better," Caius said simply, "because it's real, because we earned it, because we know how precious it is." Felix was now trying to ride Serafina's too big bike. Caius ran to help him, steadying the seat while Felix held the handlebars with determination. "I think he's going to be a doctor," Caius called back to Alara. "He has your stubborn streak and your need to fix everything. And Serafina, she's going to change the world. I can see it in her eyes." Alara thought he was probably right. Serafina had Caius's passion for justice and Alara's love for helping others. Felix had an engineer's mind and a kind, caring heart. Whatever they chose to do in life, they would know they were deeply loved. As the afternoon turned into evening, they gathered their tired children for the walk home. Serafina rode ahead on her bike while Felix dozed in his stroller. Alara thought about everything that had brought them here. The near-death experience that had started it all, the painful divorce, the months apart, the shocking truth they discovered, and the slow rebuilding of trust and love. "I've been thinking," Caius said as they walked home, "about what we'll tell the kids when they're older, what they should know about love and marriage and fighting for what matters." "What would you tell them?" Alara asked. "That love isn't just a feeling," Caius said. "It's a choice you make every single day. The strongest relationships aren't the ones without problems. They're the ones where two people face their problems together and come out stronger. And sometimes," Alara added, "the people we love make choices that are hard to understand. But that doesn't mean they don't love us. It just means they're human, and humans make mistakes. Even big ones." Caius nodded. "Even mistakes that almost ruin everything. But love finds a way." "If you're brave enough to fight for it," Alara said. That evening, after the children were asleep, they sat in their garden with glasses of wine, watching stars sparkle in the sky. It was so peaceful, something that had felt impossible during the hardest times in their marriage. "Do you think we would have made it?" Alara asked quietly, "if you had told me about the cancer from the start?" Caius thought for a while. "It would have been harder," he said. Watching someone you love go through treatment is so painful. I'm not sure our marriage would have survived, but we would have faced it together. Yes, Alara said, and maybe that would have made us stronger from the start instead of rebuilding everything later. But we'll never know. What I do know is this: I'm grateful for our journey, even the hard parts, because it taught us about love, forgiveness, and fighting for what matters. I'm grateful you came back, Kaya said softly. I'm grateful you were brave enough to fight for us when I was too scared to fight for myself. I'm grateful Serafina gave me a reason to be brave, Alara said. I couldn't let her grow up without knowing her dad. They sat quietly, holding hands, thinking about how close they had come to losing everything. They were two strong people who had forgotten that the most important things in life couldn't be done alone. Some love stories start with love at first sight. Others start with love lost and found again. But the best stories are about love that chooses to fight for itself over and over until what seemed impossible becomes as natural as breathing. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that real love is worth fighting for, please like this story. Share it with someone who needs to know that second chances are real, that love can survive mistakes, that sometimes the people we love make choices we don't understand, but that doesn't mean they don't love us. What's the biggest sacrifice you'd make for love? What's the hardest fight you've had for someone you care about? Share your story in the comments below. Maybe your story will be the next one I share. Until next time, remember this: sometimes the greatest love stories start with saving someone's life, continue with heartbreak, and end with the wisdom that love is always worth fighting for.